The coffee in Commander Daewon's cup had gone cold hours ago, but he drank it anyway. He sat in the command center of Station Crimson 9, staring at screens that showed nothing but empty space and the dead planet below. The station was old. Everything here was old. The walls were scratched and dented from 20 years of neglect. The air smelled like rust and recycled oxygen that had been recycled too many times. Daewon was 53 years old. His hair had gone gray at the temples and his uniform was patched in 6 different places. He had been the commander of this forgotten station for 12 years. Before that, he had served here as a lieutenant. The Coalition had promised they would rotate crews every 2 years. That promise was now just another lie collecting dust in the station's database. Lieutenant Hana walked into the command center. She was 32, thin and sharp-eyed, with dark circles under those eyes from too many late shifts. She carried a tablet that showed the status of the station's weapons. Most of the readings were in red. Red meant broken or barely working. "The main railgun is down again," she said without greeting. There was no point in pleasantries anymore. "Taemin says he can fix it, but he needs parts we don't have." Daewon nodded. "He always finds a way. He's been finding ways for 5 years, sir. Eventually, there won't be any more ways to find." She was right, of course. Hana was always right about these things. She was the best tactical officer Daewon had ever served with, and the Coalition had abandoned her here like yesterday's garbage. The waste of it made him angry, but he had learned long ago that anger without purpose was just another way to go crazy in the dark. The station shook slightly. Just the stabilizers acting up again. Daewon didn't even flinch anymore. "Any word from Coalition Command?" Hana asked. "We sent our monthly report 3 weeks ago." No response. Like always, Daewon agreed. Corporal Taemin's voice crackled over the intercom. He was down in the engineering section 3 levels below. "Commander, I've got the railgun working. Don't ask me how because I don't want to explain it. Just know that it'll work for maybe 10 shots before it melts itself." "Good work, Corporal," Daewon said into the comm. "Also, the reactor is making a weird sound. It's probably nothing." "Probably? 60% sure it's nothing." "Maybe 70, Hana shook her head. "This station is held together by hope and spare wire. Don't forget the duct tape," Taemin added through the comm. "I use a lot of duct tape." Despite everything, Daewon smiled. Taemin was 25 and had spent his entire adult life on this station. He had been assigned here fresh out of training, and that was 7 years ago. 7 years of keeping ancient machinery running with almost no resources. The young man had turned into a miracle worker out of pure necessity. Dr. Yuna entered the command center. She was the station's only medical officer and scientist. She was 40 years old and had kind eyes that had seen too much loneliness. She carried a data pad and looked worried. "Commander, I need to show you something." Daewon stood up. When Yuna looked worried, it was usually important. "What is it?" She tapped her data pad, and a display appeared on the main screen. It showed energy readings from the space around the station. "I've been tracking these signatures for 3 months. They're getting stronger." "What kind of signatures?" "Fleet movements, big ones. Something is moving through this sector and they're trying to stay hidden." Hana moved closer to the screen. "Could be pirates. We're far enough out that the Coalition doesn't patrol here." "Too organized for pirates," Yuna said. "And the energy patterns are strange. I've been comparing them to the station's old databases, the really old ones from before the Coalition even existed." "And?" Daewon asked. "They match Terran warship signatures." The room went silent. Even the usual hum of the station system seemed to fade away. "That's impossible," Hana said quietly. "The Terrans are gone. They've been gone for 200 years. "I know what the history says," Yuna replied. "I'm telling you what the data shows." Daewon sat back down heavily. The Terrans. Humans. Earth's empire had been the terror of the galaxy once, hundreds of years ago. They had expanded aggressively, conquered brutally, and scared every other species in known space. Eventually, the other species had united and pushed humanity back, quarantined them, erased them from star maps and history books. Earth and its colonies had become stories that parents told their children to make them behave. Ghost stories, old legends. "If the Terrans are really out there," Hana said slowly, "and they're moving in fleet strength, we need to warn the Coalition." "They won't believe us," Daewon said. "We're the forgotten station. The Ghost Crew. They stopped listening to our reports years ago. We have to try." Daewon looked at each of them. His crew. 4 people on a dying station that nobody remembered. 4 people who kept doing their duty, even though they had been abandoned. He nodded. Hana, prepare a priority message to Coalition Command. Include all of Yuna's data. Make it clear this is a threat assessment, not a drill. Yes, sir. As Hana worked, alarms suddenly screamed throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Taemin's voice came through the comm, high and urgent. Commander, long-range sensors just lit up. We've got contacts. A lot of contacts. T1's fingers flew across his console, bringing up the sensor display. His blood went cold. Ships, dozens of them. No, hundreds of them. They had appeared from dark space all at once, their drives burning bright as they accelerated into the system. The computer was trying to identify them, but the signatures matched nothing in the modern database. Then the old database kicked in, the one that was 200 years out of date. Ship classifications began appearing on the screen. Battle carriers, destroyers, cruisers, dreadnoughts, all of them marked with one word that made Daewon's hands shake. Terran. Oh no, Yuna whispered. The fleet was massive, bigger than anything Daewon had seen in his 30 years of service. They were heading deeper into Coalition space, but their course would take them right past Station Crimson 9. The station sat directly in their path like a pebble on a highway. Hana, send that message now, Daewon ordered. Sending. They waited. Minutes passed like hours. Then Hana's console beeped. Response from Coalition Command, she said. She read it and her face went pale. They're calling it a false alarm. They say our sensors are malfunctioning. They say we need to stop wasting their time with phantom readings from our obsolete equipment. Show them the visual data, Yuna said desperately. I did. They're not even looking at it. Daewon stood up and walked to the main window. He could see them now with his own eyes, small points of light in the distance. Hundreds of warships reflecting the light of distant stars. They were beautiful and terrible, like a swarm of angry stars moving with purpose and rage. Sir, they're hailing us, Hana said quietly. Daewon turned. The Terrans? Yes, sir. He straightened his patched uniform and ran a hand through his gray hair. Put them through. The main screen flickered. A woman's face appeared. She was perhaps 50, with hard eyes and gray hair pulled back in a severe style. She wore a black uniform with silver insignia that Daewon recognized from ancient military history texts. She looked at them with contempt and curiosity. Coalition Station, she said. Her voice was cold and precise. I am Admiral Jaehua of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. You will power down your weapons and stand by to be boarded. You have 1 hour to comply. Daewon looked at his crew. Hana stood at her station ready to fight. Taemin had come up from engineering and stood in the doorway. Yuna gripped her datapad like a lifeline. 4 forgotten people on a forgotten station and the whole galaxy was about to burn. This is Commander Daewon, he said to the screen. I think we need to talk. Admiral Jaehua's image filled the screen. Behind her, Daewon could see the bridge of her flagship. It was clean and new, with crew members moving efficiently at their stations. Everything about it spoke of military power and organization. Everything about it said that the Terrans had not been sitting idle for 200 years. Talk quickly, Commander, Jaehua said. My patience is limited and my schedule is full. Where have you been? Daewon asked. The galaxy thought Terra was destroyed. Jaehua smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The galaxy wanted to believe we were destroyed. It was easier than facing the truth. We were pushed to the edges, to the dark spaces beyond the rim where no one else wanted to go. We survived, we built, we grew strong, and now we've come home. This isn't home, Hana said from her station. You left. The Coalition governs this space now. The Coalition is a collection of weak species hiding behind laws and treaties, Jaehua replied. They betrayed humanity. They quarantined us like a disease and tried to erase us from history. But you cannot erase the inevitable. Terra rises again, and this time we will not be pushed aside. Yuna stepped forward. You're planning to attack Coalition worlds. We're planning to reclaim what was stolen from us. Millions will die, Yuna said. Millions died when they exiled humanity. We remember even if they've forgotten. The Coalition made us into monsters in their stories. Now we'll show them what real monsters look like. Daewon felt cold. He had studied the old wars in the Academy. Humanity's first expansion had been brutal and bloody. Species had surrendered rather than face human fleets. The Terrans had fought with a ferocity that terrified the galaxy. That was why the other species had united against them. That was why they had been pushed out and forgotten. You have a choice, Commander, Jaehua continued. You and your crew are human, are you not? Our DNA says we have human ancestry, yes, Daewon replied carefully. But we serve the Coalition. You serve masters who abandoned you. Do you think I don't know about Station Crimson 9? I have the old records. This station was supposed to be rotated every 2 years. Your crew was supposed to be replaced 12 years ago, Commander. Yet here you sit, forgotten and ignored. The Coalition used you and threw you away. Why do you defend them? The question hit hard because it was true. Daewon looked at his crew. Hana, whose brilliant tactical mind was wasted on a station no one cared about. Taemin, who had spent his entire youth keeping ancient machines running. Yuna, who could have been teaching at a university instead of studying empty space. They had all been abandoned. Join us, Jaehua said. You are children of Terra, whether you know it or not. Come home, stand with your own kind. We have ships that need experienced officers. We have colonies that need doctors and engineers. You would be valued instead of forgotten. And if we refuse, Daewon asked, then you die with the rest of the Coalition's lies. Taemin spoke up from where he stood. You're giving us 6 hours, right? That's the traditional time for a surrender decision. Jaehua looked surprised that the young corporal knew this. You've studied the old ways. I've studied everything I could find. There's not much else to do out here. 6 hours. Very well, 6 hours. After that, if you have not powered down and prepared to evacuate, my ships will destroy your station. Use the time wisely. The screen went dark. The command center was silent except for the hum of old equipment and the quiet breathing of 4 people facing an impossible choice. Hana spoke first. She's right. They did abandon us. I know, Daewon said. 12 years I've been here. 12 years of sending reports that no one reads. 12 years of keeping weapons working for a defense that will never come. They threw us away like garbage. I know, Daewon repeated. Then why shouldn't we join them? Taemin asked. He sounded young and hurt. Why should we die for people who don't even remember we exist? Yuna walked to the window and looked out at the Terran fleet. I need to show you all something, she said quietly. Something I found 3 days ago. I didn't mention it before because I thought I was wrong. I hoped I was wrong. She pulled up a display on the main screen. It showed the planet below the station, the dead world of Taesong 4. But there were new energy readings coming from it, massive signatures that pulsed with regular rhythm. The Terrans have been here before, Yuna explained. They've been setting up equipment on the planet. I finally identified what it is this morning. What is it? Daewon asked. A stellar converter. It's a weapon from the old wars. One of the worst things humanity ever created. It forces a star to go supernova. The blast destroys everything in multiple systems. The room went even colder. They're going to destroy the sun? Taemin said. Not just our sun. The blast pattern will create a chain reaction. According to my calculations, it will destroy 12 systems. All of them are core Coalition worlds. Billions of people. Hana pulled up star charts. Those systems include Valoria, the Coalition capital. Also Treshon, Mendari, and Kelvin 5, the industrial hearts of Coalition space. They're not just coming back, Daewon said slowly. They're coming back to commit genocide. The Coalition betrayed them, Taemin said, but his voice was uncertain now. Maybe they deserve it? Do the children deserve it? Yuna asked. Do the billions of civilians who had nothing to do with what happened 200 years ago deserve to die? My ancestors might have been human, but I was born on Valoria. My mother is Valorian. My father was human, yes, but he believed in the Coalition. He believed different species could live together. Should his grandchildren die because of old hatred? Daewon paced the small command center. His mind raced through options, scenarios, possibilities. None of them were good. Even if we refuse Jaehua's offer, Hana said, what can we do? This station is barely functional. We can't stop a fleet. We can warn the Coalition, Yuna said. We tried. They didn't listen. We can try again. We can send the data about the stellar converter. They'll ignore it like they ignored everything else, Hana interrupted. We're the station that cries false alarms. We're obsolete. They won't listen until it's too late. Daewon stopped pacing. An idea was forming, a terrible and desperate idea. Then we make them listen. How? Taemin asked. We fight. Hana stared at him. Sir, we can't fight that fleet. We'd last maybe 5 minutes. We don't need to destroy them. We need to slow them down. We need to buy time. If we engage them, if we actually hurt them, the coalition will have to pay attention. They can ignore reports and data, but they can't ignore an actual battle happening in their space. It's suicide, Hana said flatly. Yes. They'll kill us. Yes. We owe the coalition nothing. This isn't about the coalition, Daewon said. This is about billions of innocent people who will die if we do nothing. This is about proving that we're better than the ones who abandoned us. They forgot about duty and honor. Should we forget too? Taemin sat down heavily. I'm 25 years old. I've never even kissed anyone. I've spent my whole adult life on this station and now you're asking me to die here too. I'm not asking, Daewon said. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You can take one of the escape pods. All of you can. I'll understand. I'll fight them alone if I have to. Yuna laughed, but it was sad. No, you won't. If I leave, who will keep transmitting the data to the coalition? Who will make sure they understand what's coming? Hana checked her weapons console. And if I leave, who will actually shoot straight? You're a good commander, sir, but you're a terrible shot. Taemin stood up. If I leave, who will keep this broken station running long enough to matter? I've kept it alive for 7 years. I can keep it alive for one more fight. Daewon looked at them all and his chest felt tight. These 3 people had every reason to abandon ship, to save themselves, to take Jaehua's offer. Instead, they were choosing to stand with him. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank us yet, Hana replied. We might all regret this in about 5 hours and 50 minutes. Daewon smiled. Probably. Let's get to work. The 6 hours passed too quickly. Taemin worked miracles in the engineering section, pushing the old reactor past every safety limit. Hana prepared firing solutions for weapons that should not even work anymore. Yuna set up a continuous broadcast on every coalition frequency, sending data about the Terran fleet and the stellar converter. Daewon coordinated everything, while sending one final message to Coalition Command. This is Commander Daewon of Station Crimson 9. In approximately 10 minutes, I will engage a Terran fleet of overwhelming force. I do not expect to survive, but I will buy you time. I will show you the threat is real. Do not waste the time I'm giving you. Do not let us die for nothing. Daewon out. He closed the channel and looked around the command center. Everything was ready. Everything was as prepared as it could be. Sir, Hana said, the 6 hours are up. Power up all weapons, Daewon ordered. Lock onto the nearest destroyer. Target their engines first. Warning lights flashed on Jaehua's flagship. An officer called out, Admiral, the station is powering weapons. They're targeting the Righteous Fury. Jaehua stood from her command chair. She had not expected this. She had been certain they would surrender or flee. Hail them again. Daewon's face appeared on her screen. He looked calm. Commander, you're making a mistake, Jaehua said. Stand down immediately. No, you cannot win. You know this. We don't need to win. We just need to fight. Jaehua felt something unfamiliar. Was it respect, anger? She could not tell. You're throwing away your lives for a coalition that abandoned you. We're not fighting for the coalition, Daewon replied. We're fighting for the billions who will die if we don't. We're fighting because someone has to. Because duty means something even when no one is watching. Because we refuse to be what you've become. And what have we become? The monsters from the old stories. The thing the galaxy was right to fear. Goodbye, Admiral. The screen went dark. Jaehua stood still for a moment, then turned to her tactical officer. Destroy them! The Battle of Crimson 9 began with a single shot from the station's main railgun. The shot was perfect. Hana had calculated everything exactly right. The projectile, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, struck the Terran destroyer Righteous Fury directly in its engine core. The ship did not explode. It simply stopped, its power systems overloaded, drifting helplessly in space. Direct hit, Hana reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. One destroyer disabled. Target the next ship, Daewon ordered. Keep firing. The Terran fleet responded with overwhelming force. Missiles and energy weapons streaked toward the station. Hana had prepared for this. The station's point defense system, ancient but still deadly, shot down most of the incoming fire. The few shots that got through struck the station's shields, which held. Barely. Shields at 60%, Taemin reported from engineering. That's one volley, sir. We can't take many more. We don't need many more, Daewon said. We just need enough. Fire again, Hana. The second shot from the railgun destroyed a Terran cruiser. The third damaged another destroyer badly enough that it had to fall back. The fourth shot missed, but the fifth caught a missile carrier, and secondary explosions tore it apart. On Jaehwa's flagship, officers shouted reports. 4 ships damaged or destroyed in the first 3 minutes of battle. This should not be possible. This was one obsolete station against a fleet. What weapons do they have? Jaehwa demanded. Old human military equipment, Admiral, her tactical officer replied. From the expansion period. Kinetic weapons, electromagnetic pulse mines, point defense networks designed for human reflex combat. They're using our own old tactics against us. Captain Kyung-soo, commander of the now disabled Righteous Fury, contacted the flagship. Admiral requests permission to lead a boarding party. We can take the station from inside. Jaehwa considered this. Her ships were powerful, but they were being hurt by an enemy that should not be a threat. Every minute this battle continued was a minute her fleet was delayed. Every ship damaged was a ship that would not be available for the main assault on Coalition space. Permission granted, she said. Take that station, Captain. Take it or destroy it, but end this. Kyung-soo was young, only 31, but he was one of the best officers in the Terran fleet. He had been born beyond the rim, in the harsh colonies where humanity had rebuilt itself. He believed absolutely in Terra's cause. He gathered his best Marines and launched toward the station in armored assault shuttles. On Crimson 9, alarms wailed. Boarding craft incoming, Hana reported. 6 shuttles, heavy assault configuration. Can you shoot them down? Daewon asked. Maybe 2 or 3. The rest will get through. Do your best. Hana's fingers flew across her console. The point defense guns swiveled and fired. 2 Terran shuttles exploded. A third lost control and spun away into space. But 3 more reached the station and attached to the hull like parasites. Cutting torches began burning through the outer doors. They're boarding on decks 5, 7, and 9, Taemin said. Sir, I need to go secure the reactor. If they reach engineering, it's over. Go, Daewon ordered. Yuna, go with him. Set up a medical station in engineering. We'll have wounded. As they left, Daewon and Hana prepared to defend the command center. They pulled out weapons from an emergency locker. Old pistols and rifles that had not been fired in years. Daewon checked his pistol's charge. It was low but functional. When they break through that door, he said to Hana, they'll try to take us alive. Admiral Jaehwa will want to make an example of us. I won't be taken alive, Hana said quietly. Neither will I. The sound of fighting echoed through the station's corridors. Automatic defense systems engaged the Terran Marines. Guns fired, men shouted. Explosions rattled the walls. The Terrans were advancing, but they were paying for every meter. In engineering, Taemin worked frantically at his controls. Come on, he muttered to the old machines. Just a little more. Just keep running a little longer. The reactor was glowing dangerously bright. The temperature was far beyond safe limits. The whole thing should have melted down already. But Taemin had learned every trick, every shortcut, every way to coax just a bit more out of dying equipment. He had spent 7 years learning to speak the station's language. Now he was asking it for one final favor. Please, he whispered to the machines. Please hold together. Yuna set up her medical supplies and prepared for casualties. She knew they were coming. Through the door, she could hear the sounds of battle getting closer. Kyung-soo led his Marines through the station's corridors. They met fierce resistance. The station's automated defenses were old but effective. His men were taking casualties. But they were advancing. Slowly, they pushed toward the vital sections of the station. They reached engineering first. Kyung-soo placed breaching charges on the door. The explosion blew it open and Marines poured through. They found Taemin standing at the reactor controls, a pistol in his hand but not raised to fire. Step away from the controls, Kyung-soo ordered. No, Taemin said. Kyung-soo aimed his rifle at the young corporal. Step away or I'll shoot. Then shoot. But know that if I fall, my hand hits this control. See it? It's the emergency overload. The reactor goes critical immediately. We all die. You, me, your men, this station, and probably 6 of your ships that are too close. Kyung-soo studied the young man. He was bluffing. He had to be bluffing, except his hand was steady on the control and his eyes were calm. He was not bluffing. You'd kill yourself? I've been killing myself for 7 years, keeping this station running, Taemin replied. What's a few more seconds? In the command center, Terran Marines breached the door. Daewon and Hana fired back. A Marine fell. Then another. but there were too many. Hana took a shot to the shoulder and went down. Daewon kept firing until his pistol's charge ran empty. Then they surrounded him. Kyung-soo's voice came over the comm. "Commander Daewon, tell your engineer to stand down. We have you. The battle is over." Daewon stood with Terran rifles pointed at him from every direction. Hana was wounded but alive. He could surrender now. They had fought. They had slowed the Terran fleet. They had sent the warning. Maybe that was enough. Then he looked at the screens. The Terran fleet was regrouping, preparing to continue toward Coalition space. The stellar converter on the planet below was still charging. Nothing had really changed. The billions were still going to die. "Taemin," Daewon said calmly. "Don't let them have the station." There was a pause. Then Taemin's voice came back, steady and clear. "Yes, sir. Wait," Kyung-soo shouted. But it was too late. Taemin pushed the control. The reactor's safety systems disengaged. Power surged beyond maximum. The young engineer looked at Yuna, who had tears in her eyes. "It was an honor," he said to her. Then engineering exploded. The blast tore through multiple decks. Marines died instantly. The explosion chain reacted through damaged systems. Station Crimson 9 began tearing itself apart. Alarms screamed. Kyung-soo grabbed Daewon. "You're insane. You're all insane." "No," Daewon said as the station shook around them. "We're just people who remember what duty means." The evacuation alarm sounded. The Terran Marines began retreating, dragging their wounded. Kyung-soo pulled Daewon toward the shuttle, but Daewon fought back. "I'm staying," Daewon said. "You'll die." That was always the plan. The Terran shuttles launched from the dying station, just as new contacts appeared on the fleet's sensors. Ships dropping out of jump space. Coalition ships. Many of them. Admiral Ran Hee of the Valorian Empire stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Steadfast Pride. She was 60 years old with white hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Around her flagship, the Coalition Rapid Response Fleet assembled. 43 ships. It was not nearly enough to match the Terran fleet, but it was something. "Status of Station Crimson 9, she demanded. "Heavily damaged, Admiral," her sensor officer reported. "Multiple hull breaches. The reactor is critical, but they're still transmitting. Still fighting." Ran Hee pulled up the data that had been broadcasting from the station for the past 6 hours. She read it quickly. Her blood went cold. A stellar converter. 12 systems threatened. The Terran fleet was not just invading. They were planning genocide. "Why didn't anyone listen to them earlier?" she asked quietly. No one on her bridge had an answer. The reports had been dismissed. The warnings ignored. Crimson 9 was the forgotten station with unreliable equipment and phantom readings. Until those phantom readings turned into an actual battle. "Hail the station," Ran Hee ordered. On what remained of the command center, Daewon heard the hail. He was alone now. Hana had gone unconscious from her wounds. He had carried her to an escape pod and launched it himself, ignoring her weak protests. The pod would drift toward the Coalition fleet. Maybe someone would find her. Maybe she would survive. He activated the comm. Admiral Ran Hee's face appeared. "Commander Daewon," she said. "I am Admiral Ran Hee. We've received your data. We're engaging the Terran fleet now. Your warning saved billions." "Thank you." Daewon laughed, but it hurt. He had taken a hit in the fighting that he had not noticed until now. His side was bleeding. "You're welcome. Sorry it took us dying to get your attention." Ran Hee's expression showed shame. "I'm sorry. The Coalition failed you. We should have listened. We should have believed. It doesn't matter now. Admiral, you need to destroy that stellar converter on the planet. It's still charging. I have an idea, but I don't think you're going to like it." "Tell me." Daewon explained his plan. Ran Hee listened and her face went pale. "That's suicide. I'm already dead. This station won't last another 10 minutes. But if I can guide it into the right orbit around the planet, if I can trigger the reactor to explode at exactly the right moment, the gravitic shear should collapse the converter's containment field. It'll discharge into subspace instead of into real space. The calculations would have to be perfect. They will be. I have your fleet's computers helping me now. And I've got nothing but time. Commander, evacuate. Let us handle this another way. There is no other way. Your weapons can't penetrate the converter's shielding, and if you get close enough to board it, the Terran fleet will stop you. I can do this. This is what I've been waiting for." "Let me finish the job." Ran Hee looked at him. She saw a man who had already made his peace with death. a man who had found purpose in his final moments. She nodded slowly. "It's been an honor, Commander." "The honor was mine, Admiral." The transmission ended. Day One turned to his controls and began the calculations. The station shuddered around him. Fires burned in multiple sections. The hull was cracking. But the thrusters still worked. The reactor still had power. "Come on, old friend," he said to the station. "One more flight. One last mission." The Terran fleet and the Coalition fleet collided in the space around the dying planet. Ships fired. Missiles launched. Energy weapons painted the darkness with light. The Terrans had more ships, but the Coalition forces fought with desperate intensity. They had seen the data. They knew what was at stake. Kyung-Soo, back on a new ship after his destroyer had been disabled, watched the battle unfold. He thought about the commander who had refused rescue, the young engineer who had triggered the reactor, the lieutenant who had fought until she fell. 4 people who should have saved themselves, who could have joined the Terran cause, who instead chose to stand against impossible odds. Why? He whispered to himself. Why would they do that? Because they remembered what duty meant. Because they chose to be better than their circumstances. Because they refused to become what the galaxy feared humans would become. Station Crimson 9 moved into position. Day One worked the controls with bloody hands. Every system was failing. Life support was gone. He was breathing emergency oxygen from a tank. The command center was freezing. But he kept working. The calculations had to be perfect. The angle had to be exact. The timing had to be precise. One mistake and the stellar converter would activate. One mistake and billions died. "Almost there," he said to no one. His voice was weak. He was losing blood, but his mind was clear. His purpose was clear. Admiral Jae-hwa watched from her flagship as the broken station moved toward the planet. She understood what was happening. "Stop that station," she ordered. "All ships target Crimson 9. But the Coalition fleet had moved into defensive positions. Ranhee had understood Day One's plan immediately, and she was protecting his final flight. Her ships intercepted every shot aimed at the station. They paid a heavy price. Coalition vessels took damage. Some were destroyed, but they held the line. "We will not let you stop him," Ranhee transmitted to Jae-hwa. "That man and his crew have given everything. We will not let their sacrifice be wasted." Day One reached the final orbit. The station was barely holding together. The reactor was seconds from total meltdown. He locked in the last calculations and transmitted them to the Coalition fleet. "It's done," he said into the comm. "When I trigger this, the gravitic shear will collapse the converter. But it'll also create a massive electromagnetic pulse. Your ships need to be at least 10,000 kilometers away or their systems will be fried." "Understood," Ranhee replied. "Fleet, fall back to safe distance. All ships retreat." The Coalition fleet began withdrawing. The Terran fleet, confused by the sudden retreat, held position. Jae-hwa did not understand what was happening. Then her science officer shouted a warning. "Admiral, that station's reactor is about to explode. The blast pattern. It's going to hit the stellar converter." Jae-hwa understood then. She understood the sacrifice. The purpose. The absolute determination of 4 forgotten people to stop her fleet no matter the cost. "All ships emergency jump. Get us out of this system now." But there was not enough time. On the dying station, Day One looked at the planet below. He thought about his crew, Hana hopefully safe in her escape pod, Taemin and Yuna, who had died doing their duty. He thought about his 30 years of service. He thought about 12 years on a forgotten station. He thought about how the Coalition had abandoned them, and then he thought about the billions of civilians who would never know his name. Who would never know that 4 obsolete people on an obsolete station had saved their lives. That was okay. They did not need to know. The knowing was not the point. The doing was the point. "We were branded as old legends," he said quietly into the comm, knowing the Coalition fleet was listening. "Outdated and obsolete. Today we stood as proof that duty never becomes obsolete. We are not Terran. We are not Coalition. We are those who remember what it means to serve something greater than ourselves." He paused, taking a breath that hurt. "Let this fire we die in remind you all what that means." He pushed the final button. The reactor exploded with the force of a small star. The station tore apart in a flash of brilliant light. The gravitic shear ripped through space like a wound in reality. It hit the stellar converter's containment field and collapsed it instantly. The converters stored energy, enough to ignite a sun, had nowhere to go. It imploded, folding into subspace. The planet Taisong 4 vanished in the implosion, pulled into a dimension where it could harm no one. The electromagnetic pulse from the reactor explosion washed over the Terran fleet. Ship systems failed. Weapons went offline. Engines stopped. Communications died. Nearly a third of the Terran fleet was crippled in an instant. The Coalition fleet, safely behind the pulse line, watched as their enemies went dark. Ran He did not waste the opportunity. All ships advance. Target the crippled vessels. Drive them back. The battle turned. The Terrans, caught without full power and communications, began to retreat. Ship by ship, they jumped away to regroup. Admiral Jaeha's flagship was one of the last to leave. Before she jumped, she looked at the space where Station Crimson 9 had been. There was nothing there now but debris and fading radiation. 4 people, 1 broken station. They had turned the tide of a war. Kyung-soo looked at the same empty space. Something had changed inside him during this battle. He had watched people choose death with purpose. He had seen duty without reward. He had witnessed sacrifice without glory. And he began to wonder if the Terran Empire was fighting for the right reasons. If their cause was just. If returning with fire and fury was the answer, or just repeating the mistakes that had gotten humanity exiled in the first place. The Coalition fleet swept the battlefield. They found Hana's escape pod drifting in the debris field. She was barely alive, but she was alive. Medical ships rushed to save her. They found no other survivors from Crimson 9. Admiral Ran He ordered a full scan of the debris. Every piece was catalogued. Every fragment preserved. The station would be remembered. 1 year after the Battle of Taisong, Admiral Ran He stood at the dedication ceremony for the new Crimson Memorial Station. It was built exactly where the old station had died, a gleaming monument in the darkness. But unlike the old station, this one was not forgotten. This one was staffed with the Coalition's best. This one was maintained with care and resources. This one would never be abandoned. On the main wall of the command center, 4 names were carved in letters of light. Daewon, Hana, Taemin, and Yuna. The galaxy had changed in that year. The Terran invasion had been stopped but not defeated. The war continued, but it was a different kind of war now. Not a war of annihilation, but a war of ideals. What did it mean to be human? What did humanity want to be? Hana stood beside Ran He at the ceremony. She had survived, though her recovery had been long and painful. The Coalition had offered her a position as a tactical instructor at the Naval Academy. She had accepted. Now she taught young officers about the Battle of Taesong, about fighting with outdated equipment against impossible odds, about making every shot count. Her students called her a legend. She always corrected them. "I'm not the legend. I just served with legends." After the ceremony, Ran He and Hana walked through the new station. It was strange for Hana to see it so clean, so new, so full of people. "Do you think they'd approve?" Ran He asked quietly. Hana looked at the names on the wall. Daewon, who had commanded with quiet strength. Taemin, who had loved machines like friends. Yuna, who had believed in peace and science. Daewon would say we're wasting resources, Hana said with a sad smile. He'd tell everyone to go back to their posts and stop fussing. Taemin would want to inspect the engineering section to make sure it's built right, and Yuna would be happy that people remember. She always said that memory matters, that we learn from remembering. And what do you say? I say they saved billions and now billions know their names. That's good. That's right. The war against the Terran Empire dragged on for 5 years, battle after battle, system after system. But the Coalition was no longer unprepared. They had learned. They had adapted. They remembered that old human technology could be deadly. They remembered that duty mattered. Captain Kyung-soo had defected from the Terran Empire 3 months after the Battle of Taesong. He had provided intelligence about fleet movements, supply lines, and strategic plans. Some in the Coalition wanted to put him on trial as a war criminal, but Ran He had spoken for him. This man saw 4 people choose duty over survival, she had told the Coalition Council. He saw what we should be instead of what we are. If we punish everyone who changes their mind, who learns from their mistakes, then we're no better than the empire we fight. Kyung-soo now led a group of Terran defectors, humans who had left the empire because they did not believe in its cause anymore. They called themselves the Reform Movement. They believed humans could rejoin the galaxy without conquest, without fire and fury, without becoming the monsters from old stories. It was not an easy path. Many Terrans called them traitors. Many coalition species still did not trust them. But they kept working, kept trying, kept proving that humans could change. 20 years after the Battle of Taesong, the Terran Empire finally fractured. Not from military defeat, but from internal conflict. The reformers had grown too strong to ignore. Colonies began declaring independence. Some joined the coalition. Some stayed neutral. Only a few core worlds remained loyal to the old empire's ideals. Admiral Jie Hua, now old and tired, watched her empire crumble. She had fought so hard. She had believed so absolutely. But in the end, 4 people on a forgotten station had defeated her more completely than any fleet could have. They had shown the galaxy what humans could be. And that vision had been stronger than her weapons. She was allowed to retire quietly to a distant colony. Some said she should be tried for her crimes, but the coalition decided that mercy was more important than revenge. She lived out her days in isolation, remembered only as the admiral who lost everything at Taesong. Hana, now a senior admiral herself, attended the final peace conference. The Terran Reform Government and the coalition were signing a formal treaty. Humans would be allowed to rejoin galactic society. Old wounds would begin to heal. She stood in the hall of the great conference building and looked at the memorial wall. Every major battle of the war was listed there. Every sacrifice remembered. But the first name on the wall, the battle that had started everything, was the Battle of Taesong. Below it, 4 names: Daewon, Hana, Taimin, and Yuna. Except Hana's name did not belong there. She had survived. The other 3 had not. Kyung-soo approached her. He was older now, with gray in his hair. He had worked tirelessly for 20 years to build the reform movement, to prove that humans could be trusted, to honor the sacrifice of the crew that had changed his mind. "It never feels right, does it?" he said quietly. "Being alive when they're not." "No," Hana agreed. "It doesn't. I think about them often. Commander Daewon, who could have saved himself but chose duty. Corporal Taemin, who was so young. Dr. Yuna, who just wanted to study and learn. They had every reason to join us or flee. Instead, they stood. They stood," Hana repeated. It had become something of a phrase in the years since. When someone did their duty despite difficulty, people said they stood. It was a way of remembering. "I've spent 20 years trying to be worthy of what they taught me," Kyung-soo said. "I don't know if I've succeeded. You helped end a war. You helped bring humans back to the galaxy. I think they'd say you succeeded." They stood together in silence, looking at the names. Around them, delegates from 100 species mingled. Humans and Valorians, Treshans and Mendari, all the species of the coalition, now including humans again. The dream that had been destroyed 200 years ago was being rebuilt. It was not perfect. There were still tensions, still distrust, still those who remembered the old wars and feared human aggression. But it was a start. It was hope. And hope had to be enough. 10 years later, Hana returned to the Crimson Memorial Station one final time. She was retiring from the Navy. She was 67 years old and had served for 45 years. She had been promoted, decorated, honored. But none of it felt as important as the 18 hours she had spent fighting on the old station. The current commander of the Memorial Station greeted her. He was young and eager, honored to meet the legendary Hana. He gave her a tour, showed her all the ways the station had improved, all the new technology. Hana smiled politely, but she was not really listening. She was remembering the old station, the smell of rust and recycled air, the sound of Taimin cursing at broken machinery, Yuna explaining her theories, Daewon's calm voice giving orders. "Ma'am," the young commander said, "could you tell us the story?" "For the crew? They'd love to hear it from you directly." So Hana stood in the command center and told the story, not the official version that was taught in schools, not the simplified version that became legend. She told the real story, about being abandoned and forgotten, about choosing to fight anyway, about 3 people dying and 1 surviving by luck. "We were not heroes," she said. "We were just people doing our jobs. We happened to be in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on how you look at it. But we stood. That's all. We just stood." The young officers listened in silence. When she finished, one of them asked, "Would you do it again? If you could go back knowing you'd lose them, would you still fight?" Hana thought about this. It was a question she had asked herself 1,000 times over the years. "Yes," she said finally. "Because billions of people are alive because we fought. Because the galaxy learned that duty matters. Because 3 good people died proving that humans could be better than their worst legends. How could I not do it again?" 30 years after the Battle of Taesong, the last pieces of Station Crimson 9 were collected and placed in a museum. People came from across the galaxy to see them, to touch the metal, to remember. 50 years after the battle, a new generation was born that had never known the Terran War. They learned about it in history classes. They read the names. They visited the memorials. But it was history to them, not memory. Hana died at 83 years old, honored and remembered. Her funeral was attended by thousands. She was buried with military honors, and her name was added to the permanent memorial at the station, not above the other 3 names, but beside them, where she had always believed she belonged. 100 years after the Battle of Taesong, Admiral Ranhee's great-granddaughter commanded the Crimson Memorial Station. She had been born after the war ended. She had grown up in a galaxy where humans and other species worked together, where the old hatreds had faded, if not disappeared entirely. On the anniversary of the battle, she gathered her crew for the traditional ceremony. They stood before the memorial wall and read the 4 names aloud: Daewon, Hana, Taimin, and Yuna. They were branded as old legends, she said, reciting the words that had become ritual. They stood as Terran forces stormed the fire. They proved that duty never becomes obsolete. They showed us what it means to serve something greater than ourselves. We remember them. We honor them. We try to be worthy of their sacrifice. 4 candles were lit, one for each name. The flames burned in the darkness of space.